come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
A geek for fun.
And he's gonna hold it. We're here today to do a discussion that Alfie picked out, and it's gonna be a discussion about abandonment. About how, some people say they're gonna do Geeky Gentlemen, and then fucking bail. That's what today's show is going to be all about.
No,
I don't want neither of us are going to send that to them. We're just gonna leave that in the episode and see if they come into the group chat like, hey, listen.
Trust is such a fickle thing. Wouldn't you agree? Like it's something that really we make these institutions such as like Death God Storm or that Matt kid, and when they betray you and hurt you, it's not just the people you've betrayed, but it's like a friend. Something precious was lost this day. Something I feel we may never recover. But anyway, the topic today is something I picked off outside of recording because I might have missed the last episode myself. So I'm here on parole with my good officer of the Geeky Java crew to make sure I don't get sent to the shadow around like those boys. And we're going to be doing South inserts. Which when I said the thing, a number of things came in my mind that might not really fit the same definition because it's pretty vague what that could mean.
Yeah, I guess for me, like the self-insert. So back when Rasco was doing Geek Gentleman with me and we were doing the fan film reviews and stuff, there was one I was like. It was when I was working on, early days on the Rotlab fan audio drama. Like, I think I was just getting, like, lines in and stuff. And I was like, okay, let's look into this and, let me see if I can find other fan-made audio dramas. Because that should be, like, a pretty, easy thing to make, relatively speaking. And it lets you get ambitious. And I bet there's some cool stuff out there. So I searched on YouTube, fan-made audio drama. And one that came up was Kong, Skull Island, the place of your nightmares. I was like, oh, that's a fucking great title. That's a great idea for an audio drama. King Kong, that's perfect. And it's like 2 hours long, but I'm like, okay, it's an audio drama, you can like drive around and listen to it and stuff. Chapter 1. I'd always been a big fan of the Peter Jackson King Kong movie. I thought that so-and-so as Jack was like so handsome. Adrian Brody as Jack was so handsome. And so one day I turned on the DVD, but when I pressed play it didn't work. So I kept pressing play and then I went over to the TV and hit it. And then I woke up and I was in the movie. And it's just 2 hours of that. It's to this day is the worst fan thing I've ever reviewed, and I felt so bad because I'm just sitting there talking about how bad it is for like half an hour, and then the person watched it and was like, oh, thanks for the review. But like that was the first thing that came to mind for me for self-insert thing.
I think that's a good place to start, because I think that type of self-insert is very prevalent in the fan community and like fan fiction communities, be it the idea of creating an OC that is very clearly just you, or the act of actually putting you inside the whole genre in anime like isekai is like I woke up in this world. The Dragon Ball even did like what if I was reincarnated as Yamcha, so you can kind of find the same thing, like an official version of that. But like the idea of the fan putting themselves in the work, either through writing or like custom characters in video games and making that look as much like you as you can make it, can be like a really awesome way of kind of experiencing the thing you love in like a new way, and like everything says when like, you read a really good book, it's like you are living in the world, but doing stuff like that literally makes you think about what it would be like to live in the world. So there's like a really cool kind of narrative idea behind it. At the same time, a lot of the people who do that tend to be very young.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality of said works tends to be very unrefined, to say the least, in the most charitable sense. I'm not saying this to shit on anyone, because anyone's who like, I'm the dude who, when I was like very little, playing Dragon Ball games, and I'd always just like pick like Kid Gohan. I'd be like, oh, this was me, and what if I was Goku? Like, everyone does shit like that. It's a natural thing. It's a good thing to enjoy and play. But if you read those stories and watched those fucking gameplay, like, it wouldn't be a good time. This for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's like it is a very like kind of, it's something that gets made fun of and gets kind of poked fun at for just being considered like incredibly cringy. And like, I know I feel bad because it's one of my favorite fucking things ever, but it's just so funny but kind of mean spirited. And it's a dorkly video about, Dragon Ball Z, and they're on Namek, and Frieza's about to kill Piccolo and Gohan and Krillin. And then fucking Brian shows up, and he's a Namekian that fused with Goku. And they go like, what? But I thought Brian was just a baby-dicked weirdo with acne. No, he wasn't. He didn't have acne. It was because he was half Namekian. And he's just like, he's like, oh yeah, take this, Artard. And then he throws Frieza. He's like, but Jason McNally said you have a baby dick. Yeah, we'll take this, Spirit. Pame. And it's just like, it's very much intentionally kind of poking fun and ragging on just that idea of like, I guess with that idea of just inserting yourself into fiction in order to deal with the like angsty feelings of your day-to-day life as a youth. But I guess the interesting thing is it's literally what fiction's for, both as a writer and as a consumer of fiction. There's an amazing poster I remember seeing where a kid is like standing. He's in like a really crummy, rundown looking neighborhood or whatever, and he's standing on a bunch of books to look over a fence, and like on the other side of the fence is just like this magical, fantastic realm, and it's like captioned, "This is exactly how books work." And I really, really like that idea, and I think there's something to that. And so the idea of the idea of fiction, the idea of reading and consuming and also writing is to get lost in another world in order to process on some level your day-to-day actual life, whether that just be an escape from it, to take a break from it, or to read things that are more introspective and allow you just room to breathe, and room to look at these issues in a way that you maybe haven't. I think that's why so many like books, particularly like young adult books, just take off and get so popular. Like, and I mean, this goes back forever. Like Catcher in the Rye got huge because Holden Caulfield was just like this, shitty teenager who's pissed off at the world, and for better or worse, no one had written quite like that before. And so just a lot of people identified with it. And you get a little further and get your Twilights and your Harry Potters, and then Harry Potter's kind of about exploring the magical and supernatural and the fun and whimsy of childhood and growing into adulthood. Twilight's got a very like sexual undertone to it, which is a really good thing in a way, in a particular way, to experience as a youth and get to lose yourself in that a little bit, but in a safe manner. And you can keep naming these off. Like all these franchises serve some kind of purpose in some way, and it's kind of funny that so much stuff makes fun of, and that OCs are seen as so cringe or whatever, when OCs and self-inserts in particular are seen as so cringe, when like really that's all fiction is. Like I was making fun of Tim Drake for just being a cringy OC, because he's got his own secret entrance to the Batcave from his room across the street because he's Batman's neighbor, and he's so smart he figured out who Batman and Dick Grayson are, and he's such a good fighter that the entire League of Assassins got sent after him and he beat them all on his own, and he's such a good detective that even Batman says he's a better detective than him, the world's greatest detective, and he beat Lady Shiva in a fight, and he's got a cute girlfriend named Stephanie, and she was like the daughter of a villain, but she's a hero now with him, and he gets to hang out with Superboy, and they got like a thing going on too, and I do kind of it's fun in a way to sit there and make fun of some of the very self-inserty like crazy OC feats of a character like Tim Drake, but I was making fun of that the other day, and Steve, who, if he was here, could talk about how, like, really, when you get right down to it, every character is a self-insert, because the whole point is you're supposed to identify with the character and relate to them.
Mm-hmm. Like, whatever you put on the page, even if you're trying to make the person that you absolutely abhor and would never want to do in real life, like, and any single thing like that, your total opposite thing, you're trying to write like your ultimate villain of your story, like the most deplorable thing you can think of in your mind, it's still a reflection of you, because that's your idea of deplorable. This is a really interesting thing, that how writers like have to write, like, how do you write Superman as like always has the right answer? Because the writer doesn't. There's no like what criteria do you do? So like literally every Superman is a self-insert of what that specific writer thinks is good and right and true. You get very to the heart of that. The same as something like the Joker or something, like this is what the most awful crime this specific writer could do. Everything's a self-insert in that sense. So no, Steve's absolutely right. Everything was here. In that sense, but also just in the idea of like this idea of like franchises and like inserting yourself into something that you don't own is very recent. You used to,
I don't know.
if like the biggest example would bring up, if you just want to go
on. A Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
I was gonna just go the big one as Dante's Inferno. He's literally self-insert
that's true too.
It's like, oh yeah, you want to know what hell actually is? Well, me and my big strong senpai Virgil, who was totally my favorite poet, actually went there, and guess what? Everyone who ever disagreed with me and I just like was in hell, and like crazy story, huh? Like it's the most like completely on the fucking like it's exactly what you see, and yet it changed the course of Western literature forever. Like it's exactly what that fucking is. It was just like, oh woo, Virgil senpai. I can't believe he fell in love with me. Like it's exactly that kind of shit. But it's the testament of why it did so well. Is because again, it's deeply personal.
Alfie, please draw me a Virgil senpai comic. That's too fucking.
I'm far from the first person to make that fucking joke. That has to already exist in some form or another. It's too fucking good. But like again, it's very deeply personal, and all art is personal. But when you get to the point of, and maybe this would be like a good transition point to like another aspect of it, when you get to the point of, I myself am in these events as the writer telling you about them. it's probably the most brave and maybe foolish thing you could ever do as a writer, because boy howdy, people will hold that against you for the rest of your life because you are putting everything that you think that openly on the face, and you don't have the excuse of, oh, I was writing a character. These aren't my political beliefs. This is this character's political beliefs that I am writing. That barrier is just gone. Everything you say there will be scrutinized and judged as you are. Um, and like again, like a big example of that recently would be Tom King not just putting very clear self-inserts of himself to the point where that issue of Mr. Miracle, where where Barda's wife when his child gets born, he says was directly exactly what happened with his the birth of his child, and they like from beat to beat to beat to the point where like he jokes is like his wife was like, when do I forget a fucking co-credit on this? Because this is I did most of the work here, and you just copied the story. It's like I get very much that, but even more straight up, I guess for anyone Rorschach wise, I don't think this is much of a spoiler for the book itself, but fucking just puts Frank Miller in the book. Like Frank Miller, actual Frank Miller just shows up, which has a long tradition of previously. The one who was most famous for it would be Animal Man with Grant Morrison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Grant Morrison put themselves in Animal Man. And it's funny because when you read that issue, there's like an interesting exchange between Animal Man and Morrison, where it's like, oh yeah, I know, it was kind of turning it into like most horrific animal crime of the week, and I realized I was just too close and I cared too much about the topic, so I had to do something different and break away from it because otherwise it was just getting preachy and boring. Just that's such a like I guess that's the thing that a lot of young people self-inserts miss is kind of realizing the arrogance in what you're doing, kind of not giving yourself some humility, you know. I think that just those little steps of admitting your flaws or admitting what's wrong with you about the in regard to the character is character world, whatever, is something that I guess gives it a little bit more weight, you know.
And I think that also is the difference just in general with writing, right? Of kind of, you can tell when someone knows what their flaws are as a writer and they use that to become their strengths. When you can have an honest conversation with the work you're reading is normally when you find something really special. So like the takes when that happens, where you have, like, again, just use the animal example, where you can have a writer be so honest to the point of uncomfortability, where you're no longer looking at the idealized version. In many ways, you're almost looking at like the worst version, like the most kind of like self-aggrandizing, not self-aggrandizing word, the self-deprecating jokes as the character becomes when you write yourself. I think with Morrison in that case, specifically, the worst of that, I think, in terms of like how harsh they got, is in Flex Mentala. Is very much Flex Mentala was Grant Morrison's father, and the comic book artist musician who almost kills himself is Grant Morrison. And they have that conversation about the world being useless, and it's very much Grant Morrison reeling after the death of their father and asking, like, what's the point in going on? Have I wasted my life doing these fucking comic books? Like, it's meaningless, and it's really effective and it's really powerful. And anyone who hasn't read Flex Mentala really should read it, especially if you're a comic fan, because it gets so real to the heart of what it feels like sometimes. Like the worst days of like, I've wasted all my fucking time and it's just paper, like none of it matters. From Morrison, the person who says all of it matters, like it's them at the most vulnerable, and how they came out of it. And I think when you do something like that, when you really get so humble to the point where you're putting on personal trauma and things that shape your life that you wouldn't share with even relatives and stuff, and you're sharing with the whole world. Not only is it incredibly brave and very easy to kind of reveal the parts of yourself that takes a lot of, I guess, just um, I don't know what the word would it be, but you make yourself very vulnerable to attacks. It's kind of writing that you can rarely ever get, because it's such a connection between you and the author at that point.
Yeah, and I guess I think the thing that would be pertinent to insert here is, just doing that in and of itself doesn't make it work, though. I think you really did hit on something earlier, which is that most people that do this are really young, really inexperienced writers, both young in the sense of they've not been writing for very long, and young in the fact that they are very, low in years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, someone who does, fan fiction or whatever could hear that and go like, oh, well then, so I just need to kind of bear out all my worst stuff, and then that'll give this, weight. And it very well might, but it also might be like a huge mistake, because it might just make it come off as even more, like almost like a cry for help,
Mm-hmm. Almost like a suicide note at some point, and that's been done before. There has been accounts of like fan fiction that people have been following, and they've been following it, like, wow, this is getting really heavy. This is getting like, and then they find out that the person has passed away, taken their own life, and it's again, especially with younger writers and stuff, that there's a lot of emotions that go through that. It becomes like it just takes on an entirely other meaning. So no, you are absolutely right to preface it with that, because it's not something you should do. It's almost like the way Morrison describes it is like when they do like rituals or something, right? With like magic. It's like, even if you don't believe in it, it's a state of consciousness that they're doing. You're putting yourself in an extremely vulnerable position, and if you don't know what you're fucking doing, you will hurt yourself. With most things like that. The same's for writing, and I don't think it gets enough credit for what it is. We've both had moments where we've written things and without realizing, got choked up because we didn't realize what we were writing until we said it. And I think especially when you're a kid and you're doing stuff like that with someone who is you, it can fuck you up. Just point that, it can really, it's a dangerous thing to do without really being aware of the mental kind of task it puts on you, what it shows you about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's one of those things where writing it gets so particular. Because again, part of the point of writing is to get out those deeper emotions, those deeper parts of yourself. Like, even the most by the numbers, I'm doing this for a paycheck thing, that you write, like, you're pulling that stuff from somewhere, whether it's a formula you've seen and experienced out in the world, or which has had an effect on you because it's stuck, or you're pulling from your own experience, like, oh, I need to write this thing for kids. What's something that happened to me when I was a kid that I could turn into a story? You're literally taking a part of yourself and putting it on the page, right? So that's a different type of inserting yourself into the story, but that's what, at the end of the day, that's what a story is. It is you. It all comes from you. And so it's hard to truly, I guess, grasp or realize the kind of the implications of doing that. It's literally taking a part of you and giving it to someone else, no matter how trite a part it may be. Like the number of writers that kind of like hold themselves up but never talk to anyone again and just disappear from the world after writing like one or two great books. You saw this with J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye. You saw this with Harper Lee with Mockingbird. What's the fucking name? How to Catch a Mockingbird. You see this all the time with writers that just become incredibly isolated, and it, in large part, it's because they've already given so much of themselves. Like, I'm not a particular fan of Catcher in the Rye, but I just find the story behind it, I guess, more interesting than the story itself. You know, J.D. Salinger took the fucking pages of that book to the beaches of Normandy with him. You know, when he was working on the manuscript when he helped invade on D-Day. You know, like, that's just the craziest shit. That thing traveled with him for years. That was like his statement from, you know, starting out as a young man, and he didn't really finish it. He'd refined it and worked on it, and it got out there when he was kind of past the age for it, really. And then he never really did much else. Had a couple other things come out, but nothing nearly as successful ever again. And there's a reason for it, is because that was his story in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that he was Holden, but he definitely, it's hard not to say that he put a lot of himself into that book. And I don't know, the idea of taking your actual self and putting you in a book to interact, or a story to interact with the characters of some world, whether that be one of your creation or one of someone else's, it's funny how lightly we take it, considering how hefty a thing that is to do. You know, like I said earlier, it's mostly seen as like kind of a cringy thing to point and laugh at. But then when you really think about the implications of what you're doing, it's a pretty damn big deal. And I guess that's kind of the thing, is most people, especially really young people that are doing it, aren't thinking of the implications. They probably just saw it somewhere and thought, that would be cool, I'd like to hang out with my characters too.
And it's weird though, because I think the recent example, I think the way this has kind of gotten into bled, clawed, and toxicated its way into kind of mainstay popular culture conversation would be the term Mary Sue, right? Is meant to be an insult for the fan fiction of like a self-insert, overpowered female character who does all these different things, and the idea of this being immediately deplorable, the worst thing you could ever do, no matter what anything else is. If you have a character that is speaking from your personal experience and is good at a thing, you're a fucking Mary Sue, and you should feel bad, and you've immediately made the worst piece of fiction I've ever had to think to. Like, that idea has become so rampant that even general people who have never read a fan fiction in their life know what it is, and will like, oh yeah, like as if like it's just an assumed fact that the sky is blue, Mary Sue is bad, inherently the worst. Like, it's just, like, it's weird, and it's very recent. Like, ever since the first time it really got me was after Force Awakens, is when kind of the conversation bled in. But since then, it's just exploded, and you can rarely have a conversation about any female character without it coming up at least once. And it comes directly from the idea of this character isn't a character. This character is here to just say a message. This character is here just to be this. And even if that is true, that therefore is a bad thing, like inherently. Like, it's weird, right? Like, it's weird that this is a thing that we have to deal with now. Like, why did this happen? Like, how did this term escape and grow wings and start burning down villages here?
Like, that's the funny thing to me, because I think it was on this show where I figured out where you guys, it was you or Matt, told me the origin of the term, Which, like, I thought it was, like, kind of an older term thing that kind of got born out of academia or like, literary discussion or something. Like, maybe, like, reviewer circles or whatever. But no, it comes from fucking Sonic the Hedgehog comics.
There's a fucking character called Mary Sue. She's fucking does it. But there's also, I think the one from the fan fiction as well. It uses the same name. Was a Star Trek fan fiction about Mary Sue. She went onto the Enterprise and she was everyone's best friend. Like even Khan was her best friend. Like everyone got along with Mary Sue. She solved all the problems and she did everything.
Well, I mean, that's just every fucking Star Trek.
I know, right? I know that the Star Trek fans are like, oh, this is fucking garbage. It's like, oh yeah, DC Comics creates a character who's all about hope and everyone gets along with them and they're like really powerful and solve all the problems. Superman fans look on with disdain. Like, it's bullshit. I don't understand. It's so fucking backwards. But it's treated as such an empirical fact. To the point that I guess maybe because we've talked about like the idea of like the people behind it, like the writers making these decisions, the kids making these decisions. What do you think about just the general? Because we saw, I don't know if you saw it, but quite recently, Dragon Ball YouTuber Anime AJ got into like a lot of hot water over like the fandom recently because he had a hot take, as you will, where he was talking about just no one gives a shit about
no. We gotta add more. We gotta add the full context. There was the meme of the guy from Tangled with a billion knives or swords or whatever pointed at his throat, and it was like, what hot take do you have that would garner this reaction? And he goes, and he's posted it as a hot take that's garnering a reaction of outrage. It says, "No one gives a fuck about your OCs. I don't care." And then it got so much negative reaction. People went at his throat. He had to delete the tweet.
It was the most true that meme has ever been done that I saw in real time. Like, it was kind of miraculous. Like, it was Nostradamus couldn't have predicted the shit onslaught and the accuracy of that tweet.
It was just so fucking funny. Like, he knew. He was like, oh, this is probably going to be controversial. But it was so controversial. Like, fucking a billion artist accounts were subtweeting him and shit. Oh, it was so good. I hope he's okay, but goddamn, that was so fucking funny.
But like, I think the fact that there's like two very heated sides of that argument, I think, kind of just says the point of
like, no one gives a fuck about your OC versus, oh no, I love your OCs. They're so cool. I love all of them.
Like every single one is valid and good and special. Like, it's an inherently, for some reason, very. And I guess the reason is just because it's personal to people. Like, if your attack on an OC is seen as attack on them, specifically. Like, people get defensive over just a character they like. Never mind a character they made themselves. Sometimes putting in a lot of fucking money to get that commissioned by people if they don't have the artistic ability to do it themselves, or to spend the time drawing and designing the thing. Like, people put a lot of effort into it. So when...
actually, the funny thing is, this I'm going to take a step back in order to kind of analyze this, because I think this is interesting.
Okay.
Because I don't really know a lot about AJ, but, like, I kind of have a certain impression of him given the interactions and the way I've seen him talk about things. And so I'm going to use another friend of ours instead, Lance, Missed Air Fusion, as an example. Did you ever watch the episode... Let me do it this way. That's my favorite episode of Dragon Ball Dissection. I like the one where Lance talks about Mount Paozu for a long time.
Oh boy.
Because there's like an episode of Lance's show just goes on and on and on about Mount Paozu and how it's never called that. Goku's home is never confirmed to be there in the manga. That's an anime-only thing. I don't care about this example. I don't care about that. It just goes on and on. It's like the most pointless fucking fucking thing. But I know for a fact from knowing Lance that it comes from just years of talking with people and saying, yeah, Goku's home in the mountains. And someone being like, oh, you mean Mount Paozu? He's like, no, not really, because that's not really a thing in the manga. The manga's the top source I use. Well, why don't you just say it's Mount Paozu then? If does the manga source it? No, it doesn't. But I don't like that detail. I don't think that's valid because it's from the anime and they put a lot of other garbage. It's just like it all devolves from that like fucking type of conversation until the point that Lance has gotten just outrageously passionate about it, and I find it really, really amusing. And I think that AJ, from the impression I've gotten from him, probably has a similar experience talking about people, and then they just bring up their fucking OCs who are like super overpowered and garbage like that, and probably just has the opinion, I don't give a fuck about your OCs. They're dumb, all of them, and it's gonna put them off of OCs. But then, of course, other people see that. And, like, my OC's cool. I don't do that with them. I just, it's a fun way for me to express my fandom. It's probably not worth getting into a whole conversation with. It's probably worth people looking at the tweet and being like, oh, so it's his hot take. Okay. But that did not happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, it's just fascinating, man. It's just the idea of it being... Because every fandom has a relationship with OCs. Like I remember back in the Alfie cringy days, back in the RP
so last
quiz, last week when I was in RP, there was like a huge stigma against OCs for almost a valid reason. Because like how it would work in RP is you're doing it and you're role playing as a character. You're effectively writing that character specifically in your account or whatever is meant to just be that character. So I obviously had a Superman, right? I wrote it as if I was in character as Superman. So therefore I couldn't tell anyone to fuck off, sadly. I had to kind of humor everyone. But like a lot of people don't like that specific context. And I think this comes to writing as well, just in general. Whenever an OC would come on and you're like, okay, in this situation, Goku should probably take charge because like Goku's like the leader of the Z-Fighters and stuff. OC comes along. Actually, no, I've got Super Saiyan 10, so technically I should be the strongest and the one in charge. And also, I've had a child with Chi-Chi, and also this, and this, and this, and this, and I can warp reality, and this, to like such an and play it like dead straight. So if you said anything, like, well, no, if we're doing a Dragon Ball Z storyline, we kind of want to make it just focus on Goku. Absolute chaos erupts, exactly like the AJ tweet. You're being elitist, you're not letting OCs in, you guys are all fucking cringy, I hate every single OC that's ever existed, you're all like rabble. And that's like the big example from personal experience that I've seen. But I think that applies to just art communities, YouTube videos, forum, power scalers, like, hey, like, people...
power scalers. Those are the fucking, hot take. Power scalers are the fucking bottom feeders of everything.
Dude, you don't know. People would have legitimate debates of who was stronger, Ice from Dragon Ball AF, Young GG's OC, or Zycor, Toyotaro's Dragon Ball AF OC. Who was the strongest Dragon Ball OC villain? And could they beat, like, Beerus? The shit just got, like... A YouTuber who I don't know on a personal level, so I wish him all the well, but I've seen the videos, has a character called Raikon. And they have effectively made a career of pitting their Super Saiyan 5 OC against other characters, and people who aren't like casual fans who watch this thing actually get so used to it they just assume this character must be canon. Otherwise there wouldn't be this many videos about him fighting Goku and everything. There wouldn't be this much art of him. And it's like the power of that is low-key insane. I don't want to make this too much off topic onto OCs, but I think the ones we're specifically bringing up are very much self-inserts inherently. So I think we're still in the clear on the topic, because they're very much, they don't talk, the voice of the character isn't like Goku. Like when we write Goku, Goku doesn't speak like this. When we write Batman, Batman doesn't speak like this. But like how these characters are written, it's just a person writing. And I think Matt also might becoming young writers and not really knowing how to make characters' voices distinct, because that is a lot skill, and that's still hard no matter how good you are. That is a really hard skill to kind of master. But like just look at a Bendis comic or something. Like the idea of the OC being yourself and being put in these situations where people on the outside who don't know any better think it's part of another person's work, like that's just fascinating to me. Like you still get things of like, is Zykel canon from people of like Toyo, and now Toyotaro is actually writing Super, so why he should just do it at this point, put him in Heroes or some shit, make his self-insert OC canon, why not?
I don't even know, man. It's such a weird thing to me, and I guess because like, so I spent like a lot of my early teens and indeed a lot of my youth, like I look back on it, I was really isolated socially, but I never really developed into anything to like latch onto and insert myself in. Like I just watched a lot of TV, but not like one specific show. Like I didn't really find comics till I was like 17, 18 years old, and I was kind of beyond like the phase for a lot of that stuff. And so in a way I feel like I kind of missed out on it, and I look back and like I did writings at that age, and it's been a long ass time since I read them. I'm certain that it's like pretty cringy and has stuff in it that 14-year-old Ian found cool. I don't think I ever directly inserted myself in. I mainly just like copied things from movies and stuff I was watching. I don't know. It's so weird to me to think on that level, and to think about self inserts and think about, you know, creating OCs to fit in this world or that world. And I mean, I did it to some extent, I'm sure, but just not as deep as I think, you know, you certainly experienced or you did. I can't put myself back there enough to think on it. I guess like if I were to think of my own self-insert character, it would be, I had a lot of Lego when I was a kid. And there was I got a really good collection of Lego castle stuff. And so I had like a king and a evil king and warring kingdoms and yada yada, you know, fucking Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings was all really popular at that age for me. And so I created one character, and he was the prince, son of the king, and the good king, and he was so cool, and he like double wielded swords, and he got bit by a werewolf so he could turn into a werewolf, and it's just it was such an awesome thing. And like he had the coolest, most unique piece of castle armor that like it had a dragon on it, but it was a different kind of dragon because he was setting off on his own. And like in retrospect, that was probably my self-insert moment right there. But because I remember trying to play Legos with my friend, my neighbor friend, and like he hated my prince character. I'm like, what's wrong with the prince character? He's like, it's just stupid. It's like got a different dragon. It's not the same. It doesn't really work, and he doesn't even look like, you used a completely different kind of hair color and everything for him, so he doesn't even look like you would be the thing. So he's fucking hating on my OC. That bastard. It's harassment to hate on someone's OC, Alfie. I need you to sue him for me. You're my lawyer.
Is this how this one's going? Is this what we're investing our time into now? Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really wholesome, man. I didn't know that. That's a really, really wholesome, cute story. Just play with the little Legos on that one. That's pretty good. I think I guess the elephant in the room that we should talk about, at least a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, I think would be, because I'm literally looking at our Discord right now, the decision to kind of insert ourselves as Batmite and Mixelplick with like avatar usage and like the idea of what does that say from our own personal thing. Obviously, we can't get into too much on that, but just like the general idea of it, I think is neat, and it's a decision that kind of took a while to get to it. It wasn't like we didn't start Geeks for Fun and we were immediately that. It's a relatively recent change, in all things considered.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. It kind of it's one of those things where it's fun to like joke about, and once we did it, it enabled a lot of fun because then we had like emojis to use and everything, and it's just that is kind of what those characters are there for, though. You know, like they kind of exist to be that like crazy writer character that can make the it's like an escapist character for writers when you think about it, because like, okay, what the fuck am I gonna have Superman go up against this week? I've been writing this book for like the last 15 years. What am I gonna do with him? Well, I'll just have some fucking weird magic guy show up that can do literally anything. That way I don't have to justify where he got this from or how he built this or what he stole this from. And now how's Superman gonna deal with this guy? Great, I have to think of a way around it. You know, it seems almost like a creation of utility. And of course it's so funny because Batmite is created off of the success of doing that crazy wacky shit to Superman. You know, this is how things have changed. Where like some Superman was doing got really popular, so every other character in DC started having those same kind of things put in them. And Batman was the first. So like Mixelplick got really popular. Oh, we need a fifth dimensional imp for Batman stories. Okay, this is Batmite. The gimmick with him is, instead of just, you know, being like malicious, he's just such a fan. And he wants to put Batman through all these crazy things to prove how cool Batman is. Which, you know, not to toot my own horn or anything, I like that direction for the fifth dimensional imp so much more than the nuisance. And I think it's kind of hilarious that Morrison for New 52 kind of stole Batmite's motivation to give to Mixelplick.
I mean, New 52 Mixelplick is like barely in that run, but then at the same time it's kind of all his run, so like you can make that argument, sure. I don't know if that, I think that's more the idea of like,
I just mean like literally when Mixelplick's New 52 origin is talked about and explained, it's no longer the malicious force that wants to hurt Superman. It's shifted, and I believe New 52 is the first time this ever occurred. I could be wrong on that, but it's shifted to now wanting to play with Superman, now wanting to be, you know, like shifting more toward a Batman direction, away from like I think quite intentionally away from the direction more kind of set up as a possibility for Mixelplick to evolve into.
Yeah.
With whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Like that, Moore's definitely the guy who would say, "Hey, let's make this character fucking kill people." Like, there's definitely an Alan Moore-ass take for sure. But I also think, really, Dini, I would credit that more as the first person who made Mixie kind of more of a Superman stan, albeit the stan who hates the character, but definitely still a stan.
Yeah, no, like he's still like got that like mischievous little annoyance kind of thing going for him. In Superman the Animated Series.
I mean, Batman
like,
tried to get Batman's fucking
really...
show cancelled, so I think that's more evil than anything Mixelplick has ever done.
That was well after the fact. Like, we're getting too far into it, but like that was well after the fact. I'm just saying it's funny that
Are we arguing right now?
Too...
You fucking
Batman
stan? Is this what this is? Is this where we fight?
I love that it's become like a fucking trope that Mixelplick and Batmite just get in fights and rewrite DC continuity. Like that's just the fucking thing now.
Because if
So
we're talking
good.
like self-inserts, that's literally what the writer's bullpen is, right? Is
Hmm.
funny story. It's not on DC, but I think it's very indicative of kind of how these things can work sometimes. Kind of like the sports team mentality of it. Is back in the 90s, when the Spider-Man books were doing the Clone Saga, the X-Men team was like a separate division at Marvel, and they were seeing that these
Oh, that makes
Spider-Man
so
books,
much sense.
yeah, these Spider-Man books were like selling like hotcakes. So like, all right, we need a big event to show up those fuckers, like the real mean spirited. Like you can see the documents, like these sons of bitches, like more so than they talk about DC. They're kind of friendly with that one, but like the other Marvel guys is who they fucking hated. Um, that's how big Marvel and '90s just got. It's just the only competition was themselves. Um, but they were like, oh, we need to make that apocalypse. And then the Spider-Man guys saw this shit. It was like, all right, we can't end the Clone Saga now. We got to keep it going until this fucking X-Men event ends, so we can keep our sales bigger than theirs. And that's why the Clone Saga kept going and going and going. It's directly because of fucking infight squabble bullshit. And I think that happens more than people care to admit in comic. Obviously, we can't know, but you'll see shit, man. You'll see takes. You'll see characters that are very clearly meant to be this writer. Like people have not missed a beat being able to hop on the Dan DiDio bandwagon of like revealing some shit. And people have said that other writers have said the same thing about like Morrison. Other people have said the thing about like Alan Moore. Like Jeff Johns put that fucking raccoon in his fucking thing to throw shade at Moore. And like tons of like there's this whole fucking reading on the Batman Who Laughs that it's Snyder's fucking take on Jeff Johns and why he hates him and like all this fucking shit. Like there's some beef, man, that may or not be true, but there's definitely some inner beef going on between. Which of course you get a bunch of writers together, um, in a corporate setting like that, you're bound to just get clashing personalities. But it's interesting, and I think Mixelplick and Batmite kind of became the representation for that. The South insert of no, this take is better. Trust me. No, you're wrong. That again, if you've ever written with someone, happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's weird to me that to see the number of like self-insert characters that show up in comics. Fucking Mr. Miracle's last issue has Tom King, Mitch Gerards actually show up in the comic. That happens a lot in Tom King stuff. He's put a lot of himself and other writers and people he's worked with just in the books.
He really does.
Like in the background. And yeah, you're right. They have created a lot of things. Like it's funny that Morrison has like 2 or 3 different characters created to be the villain of a story, and it's just the villain is DC Comics.
Or the villain is Alan Moore. And even then, like the Morrison South insert OC, Nix Utan, the Super Monitor, like he literally made the most South insert. I'm not just a monitor, I'm the monitor with the S on his chest who comes in to save the day and is not just a regular writer, it is in fact the most awesome, powerful character who gets to help solve Final Crisis and then help form the multiversity. Like Morrison fucking does this shit even when it's not themselves. It's just a legit, straight up fan fiction OC. There's this whole reading of Final Crisis is the conversation between Nix Utan and Mandrak is Grant Morrison trying to make an argument to Alan Moore that comics are worth saving.
God, I need to reread Final Crisis with that in mind. I'd never heard that before.
Mm-hmm. Like the whole book is about like the fallen, the first and wisest and greatest monitor who became a vampire, who felt the universe was robbed from him, and now is banished outside of it, yet is always lurking outside its corners and unable to let it grow and wants it to destroy. And then the young, new monitor who is just a writer trying to make a paycheck is secretly revealed that he's a superhero and he can come and he makes a desperate plea for the good of the universe. Like, it's all fucking there. It's like, wow.
Man, I still, like, yeah, I told you about my my Alan Moore OC I want to create.
Yes, but you should
story.
share that with the people because it's pretty great.
Okay. So I wanna. There's this character, this thing in Green Lantern continuity that Alan Moore created for his like one or two stories that he ever did on the characters, and claimed that he created the whole verse. And it was, he created the Inversions and the Empire of Tears, which, in all fairness, great fucking name, Alan Moore. Legit, love that. And the idea is like the Guardians were rising up, but there were of course forces in the universe still as the Guardians aged and other forces grew in power and stuff too. And one of those forces was the Empire of Tears, and it was a dark magical empire. And so in the early days of the universe, when it had to be decided what would be the dominating force of reality, would it be magic or science? And the Guardians and the Empire of Tears went to war to decide the outcome, and the Guardians won. And the leaders of the Empire of Tears, the Inversions, were strung up and crucified and, you know, left to live an immortal life of pain and suffering as, you know, punishment for their crimes against the universe. And so, like, the fucking character I want to make would be Alan Moore spelled backwards. And it would be like the Empire, or the Emperor of the Empire of Tears, and he would be the king of the Inversions. He'd be like a fucking Alan Moore looking, you know, Davy Jones fusion dance, you know, space wizard, and he just, I fucking hate this universe. I fucking created half of you. You're just the fucking refuse of my will and my powers, and I'm taking it all back. That's if I ever get to write, like, I could, of course I could do this as like my own thing, or I could do this as like a fan fiction or whatever, but like part of me really wants to save that story if I ever get to actually write for DC, because I think it would have a lot more impact if I could write that story for DC Comics and get it like officially published.
You would get all the leading cool headlines, my friend. That comic would make your money. that would sell out hotcakes. It would destroy your career, but it would make your career at the same time. Like,
absolutely,
people would hate you, but people would also love you. Like, you become the new hot thing in comics. As Sid Part 2 is like, well, yeah, his Batman was like surprisingly like docile and kind of like by the numbers, like he didn't really change anything. Then he just made this fucking wild slam dunk Green Lantern comic on Alan Moore out of fucking nowhere. 100 issues on Batman, really one issue on Green Lantern. Guess which one people will talk about more?
No, but that'd be the thing, though, right? Like, no. I start with the Green Lantern thing, and it gets me like I'm the new hotness. I'm the like thing that everyone's worried about and everyone's talking, and gets the takedown threads that I'm just like a DC shill because I don't support the creator rights for Alan Moore, and I'll realize one day when I get screwed out of the character, like I'll make this character, and then DC will like turn him into a fucking plushie and make billions of dollars, and I will get like a check for like 45 cents, and everyone will be like, see how you follied, and I'll be like, no, I'm gonna fucking go cash this check and use it to go buy one of those fucking plushies, and then I'm gonna go to Alan Moore's house, and I'm gonna fucking sign it.
That's a chance, man.
I swear to God, my disdain for Alan Moore, like, it's so weird for me. This is completely off topic, but like, Alan Moore has been undeniably fucking screwed over by DC Comics to some degree. Like, there's no denying that they did really kind of, you know, strong arm him, but like a lot of comics creators have done so, and like, from what I've been able to gather, I haven't done exhaustive research, but from what I've been able to gather, DC, for what they did wrong to him, have done a number of things to extend the olive branch and try to mend things. And they've done a number of things really well for him. And they've done a number of things to try to just, you know, patch things up. DC has, as far as I can tell with Alan Moore, like, the only thing he wants is for them to stop publishing Watchmen. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not going to do that, and it's kind of ridiculous to ask him to, because it's such a, like, culturally important book at this point. It would be kind of irresponsible for them to. And Alan Moore, like, you go from being the victim in this to now you're just so fucking whiny about it. I just don't care. Just fucking, you suck now. You've made me side with them. Can't you see you're going down a path I just can't follow?
There's your true self. Where's the Annie Padme slash fic, but it's Ian and Alan Moore.
I swear to God, I have no patience for Alan Moore as a person. Like, again, my ultimate take on Alan Moore is that dude could be, like, carrying money for, like, a really important charity and get, like, mugged in the street and have, like, his teeth kicked in and have the money taken from him, and it's just the saddest, and then, like, he, like, limps bleeding to the charity and tells them the story, and they're like, oh no, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, that whole situation could happen to Alan Moore, and he would still find a way to come out of it and be the bad guy. Like, I swear to God, Alan Moore rolls a nat 1 on charisma every time.
Yeah, pretty much. Have we got anything else you want to touch on this one?
I mean, I shared my cringiest OC insert. Do you have one that you want to share?
I've made a few. I made a bunch from a bunch of things. I made Naruto ones. I made Dragon Ball ones. I get fucking Darth Revan is everyone's cringy self. So OC at this point in Star Wars fandom. What would be a good one? What would be a good one to share? Because they're all pretty fucking hot take. I guess the worst one I made would be... like I said, it's hard to think of. Oh no, I had like fucking Frieza's granddad who somehow looked younger than Frieza and was like, you know, the Dragon Ball multiverse forms where they've got like 10 arms and shit. It was like that.
You fucking didn't. You fucking hypocritical bitch. I swear to God, with you out
like fucking 7, man. Like, give me a break.
No, I'm gonna hold this against you forever. You are fucking like such a hypocritical little bitch. Like, fucking King Cole's 6th form is so stupid. Like, why would you draw something with that many arms? Meanwhile, 7-year-old Alfie knows exactly why you would draw something with that many arms, because it looks fucking sick, and you're just sitting here in judgment because you're a fucking hypocrite.
No, I think it's just because I didn't know how to draw arms, and like I just stick figures around and shit. I definitely made a fucking Sonic OC. I just can't remember which one it was. I can't remember the fucking... It wasn't a headshot, because even back then I did that was overplayed. Everyone was a fucking headshot. Like, even in the playground, everyone had a fucking headshot. It's like, come on. Originality. I think it was like a fucking fox. But again, Tails exists, so not exactly original, but I guess it was less played. It was like some fucking cringy ass fox. If it was posted online, would definitely have made porn of it. So I'm glad that never existed. But yeah, I've had a few that are all bad. I've never had a single good one. I guess the only good OC who will stand to my fucking deathbed is the Solar Shark. That is my true self-insert. That is exactly everything I have to say on life and worth in the universe. Is Iris feels...
I just like how the Solar Shark is like super inconsistent, because it shows up as a threat, and then you're like, no, but this happened with it. No, wait, but this other thing, and I'm like, you fucking... Bitch, you fucking can't commit.
No.
You can't even make
It
your
shows
OC
up as a
like a
threat,
consistent character.
But like, because we never get to see that story, we never get to see the eventual team up. Like, it's like every superhero meetup it starts with a fight, and then there's gonna fight a different thing. So clearly, shut your fucking whore mouth.
Listen, I am here to do two things. I am here to chew bubblegum and ride you into the sunset, and I am all out of bubblegum.
Well
Okay?
then, I think it might be time to ride, my boy. To hop on.
Time to hit the old dusty trail.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
The old geek road they call that.
Okay, so we'll need to get Matt to give us a review topic for next week. This is fun though. This is fun, silly goofiness. Alright everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the champion of the oppressed OC makers. We've all been there.
Yeah. And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we'll be discussing things.